the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It's Wednesday, December 10th. We're coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios. And tonight we've got an interesting show for you. We're our radio show that we do live every night from 6 to 7 is having major difficulties. And so we are not doing our radio show at all. This is all just social media that we're doing tonight. But I'm so excited about this night because it's something I've been waiting to do on our book review night. And I just thought, we just should go ahead and do it anyway. And if the people that are listening to us on the radio, they can catch up later. They can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, or X, and they can find us at another time. So this is our book review night. That's what we do on Wednesday nights is we just take a book that I've read, that I've been sent, that I've studied in the past, and I just try to share some of the wisdom from that book with you guys. And so maybe it'll help you live a healthier life. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to break down one of my favorite books of all time, The Master and His Emissary. And we are just going to start it. So tonight's going to be the introduction to that show, to this book. It's going to be the introduction show to that book. And we're just going to see if we can get through this. And this may take us a month or two to go through on Wednesday nights to break down The Master and His Emissary. But it is seriously one of the best books I've ever read. And it has changed my life, the way that I take care of patients, the way that I see the human body, the way that I see health. And so these next few Wednesday nights are probably going to be they're probably going to be pretty intense. They're going to be in depth. We're going to really take a look at some health. So if you guys are following the show and you watch the show and you're used to some of the different stuff that we do, I think you're going to like these next few Wednesday nights because it's going to be pretty intense. And it was really interesting setting up this show and getting ready for this show this afternoon. But I've been getting ready for this show since we started in September because I knew that we were eventually going to get to this book. But one of my patients came in this afternoon, and I haven't seen her since before Christmas, and she was like, "Man, have I been needing to see you?" And she works at a desk, and she's like, I said, "Well, is there something particular that's bothering you today?" And she said, "Yeah, it's just my neck and shoulders." And she said, it's just really bugging me. And she said, the more stressed I get, it seems like the more I just hunch forward. She said, I just feel like I'm just sitting forward like that. And she's like, the more stressed I get, the more I feel like I'm hunching forward. And I don't understand why. And I thought that was such a great sentence. I thought it was a great sentence for what we're going to talk about tonight, because she doesn't understand why, and we don't understand why, and we don't have any idea what's going on. And that's part of my mission, and as we go through, we're just going to get through the very beginning of this, just the introduction of this book tonight. But some of the stuff that Dr. McGilchrist is sharing with us is just to explain to us why, and to maybe be able to bring a change in society through understanding of how our brain works. And I know for the most part, a lot of people out there, that's not a big deal to you guys. You got things to do, right? You got families to raise, you got businesses to take care of. There's just a lot of things going on out there that it's really not a big deal to try to figure out all the things like what's happening to your brain. But the big deal is when it's not working properly. When it's not working properly, you have problems. And I sat with a 22-year-old girl today in a doctor's report who's been stressed out her whole entire life. And on the first day when she came in, she was telling me last week, or maybe it was Monday. It might have been Monday when I saw her. She was telling me about all of the diagnosis that she thinks that she has. She was telling me about how she thinks she's autistic and that she thinks she needs to see a psychiatrist, and she's been depressed and has anxiety. And she's got all of these things. She thinks she has POTS and and all this stuff that's going on with her. And I listened to her that first day, and I just wrote down, and I just kept writing, and I kept writing. And when I got to the end of the bottom of the page, she actually made this statement: "You're going to have to get another page." And I was like, "That's all right. I'll get another page, but I just want you to. I want you to express all these things to me." And then today, when she came back for her doctor's report, I stood on the board, and in the room, and I wrote down the things that I've learned in these books. Like, I explained to her the right brain and the left brain and how it works differently, and how when it's not working properly, here are all the things that go wrong. And she just she just did like everybody else has done that I've had the opportunity to explain this to. And Dr. McGilchrist says it in the introduction of the book tonight. He actually says the same exact thing, and we'll get to it here in a minute. But he talks about that when he explains it the way that it really works, people know it in their souls. They know it in their spirit. They know that that's the way that it really works, and they hear the words as if they already knew the words, because I think that's what truth really is. And when you explain to someone who's going through any sort of problems, exactly, if you explain to them what's like, this is the way it should work, and this is what's happening when it doesn't work, it just is so freedom. It just freeing for them. It just creates such a freedom for them. So these next few Wednesday nights are going to be a lot of fun for me, because I just absolutely cannot say how much I appreciate the 20 years of work, or however long it took Dr. McGilchrist to get through this book. It's a copyright 2009. He's got some letters in here that he in the introduction that he wrote that he signed in 2012. And there's different things, and so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about it. We don't have to do any commercials, because we don't have the radio show going, so we're just going to go for it. And if you guys have a comment or anything that you'd like to add, feel free to do that. Feel free to send it in to us. So I'll be glad to visit with you if you got something that's going on with you. But that's what we're going to do tonight. So let's talk just a little bit about who Dr. McGilchrist is. So, and this comes from, this is on his actual Channel McGilchrist. You can find it, Channel McGilchrist. It's McGilchrist.com. And this is in the About section. Ian McGilchrist is a former fellow of All Souls College, Oxford. He's an Englishman. An associate fellow of Green Temple College, Oxford. A fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. A fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. A consultant emeritus of the Bethlehem and Maudsley Hospital of London. A former research fellow in neuroimaging at Johns Hopkins University Medical School in Baltimore. A former fellow of the Institute of Advanced Studies in Stellenbosch. He now lives on the Isle of Skye off the coast of northwest Scotland, where he continues to write and lectures worldwide. He was a late entrance into medicine. After a scholarship to Winchester College, he was awarded a scholarship to New College, Oxford, where he read English. He won the Chancellor's English Essay Prize and the Charles Oldham Shakespeare Prize in 1974, and graduated with congratulated first-class honors in 1975. He was awarded a prize fellowship of All Saints College, Oxford in 1975, teaching English literature and pursuing interest in philosophy and psychology, in particular the mind-body relationship. Between 1975 and 1982, as a result, he went on to train in medicine. And during this period, All Souls re-elected him to further fellowship, and again in 2002. He was formerly a consultant psychiatrist of the Bethlehem, I keep saying that wrong, Royal and Maudsley NHS Trust in London, where he was clinical director of their Southern Sector Acute Mental Health Services. So he's worked senior register level, the National Psychosis Referral Unit, the National Eating Disorder Unit. During the period, we also worked as a research fellow in neuroimaging at Johns Hopkins University. He is a studied human being, and he has been working on this for quite some time. He's written lots of articles. He's written multiple books now, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to find this book. It's just an absolute gem of a book, and it has a lot to do with life and health. And you'll find as we go through the book, just exactly how it all works together, and everything that a lot of the stuff that I've learned so far about the right brain and the left brain is a big deal. And he in his acknowledgments, he has given praise to the person who wrote Principles of Psychopathology, Madness and Modernism, The Paradoxes of Delusion. These are just some of the books that have jumped out. He does a good job of acknowledging. So this is the preface to the new expanded edition right here. And so we're going to go through some of this tonight, see if we can get through some of it. And we're just going to talk our way through it because it's super great. So psychiatrist debunks the left brain, right brain myth. You know, I had that when I was talking to that 22-year-old today. She told me, now, isn't the right brain the creative part of the brain and the left brain's the real analytical part of the brain? And it's like, no, it's not the way it works. That is old stuff. That is old stuff that happened, and it mainly happened because speech is on the left side of the brain. The speech centers are on the left side of the brain. So for years and years, people that studied the brain, because people who had damage to the left side could no longer speak, what they thought was that the left side of the brain was the master part of the brain, and the right side was basically worthless. And so he starts off right here. Psychiatrist debunks the left brain, right brain myth. The headline proclaims, always interested to learn more, I read on, only to discover that the psychiatrist in question is myself. This puts his finger on the nub of the matter. I don't believe in the left brain, right brain myth. I believe in discovering the truth about the hemispheres. And this is him talking right there. So what he really wants us to understand is that it's not so much that the brain doesn't always work together. It does. The whole brain is always working together. The right side and the left side of the brain, unless you've got some like a schizophrenic type of situation or some really brain damage type stuff, the whole brain is working. And there's more similarities than there are differences in the brain. And there can be no question that it would be foolish to believe most of what passes into pop culture on the topic of hemisphere differences. When people object that each hemisphere is involved in everything we do, they are right. When someone says yes, the right side, the right hemisphere, and the left hemisphere are involved in everything we do. When they assume that means there's no differences, they are wrong. Let me say it again. When people object that each hemisphere is involved in everything we do, they are right. When they assume that there's no differences between them, they are wrong. It is not what each hemisphere does, it's how it does that matters. Each hemisphere is involved in everything, true enough, just in a quite different way. Your brain is split. Our brain is split in half. We have a right side and we have a left side. And the way that the brain works is what makes it different. And when you're studying it, it's not so much that you're studying what's similar, in order to make it, to understand it, it's the things that are different. So when The Master and His Emissary came out in November 2009, I was hoping that a handful of people might find the thesis truly interesting. I even hoped that they might feel inspired and to take it further, but I anticipated that otherwise it would be largely ignored, and that is not what happened. His colleagues and mentors in the world of psychiatry and neurology had, from the very outset, some 30 years ago, counseled me against getting involved in laterality research, since it was stigmatized within the neuroscience world due to its appropriation by pop psychology. When he started this journey, he got advised not to go into right brain, left brain stuff, because inside the true science of things, they didn't buy that stuff. There's like, look, don't get into that. And the neuroscience world is not going to do it, because now it's the psychology world is taken over, and those guys were fighting. And the thing that popped out to me on that was that's exactly what I've faced so far, trying to tell some of my colleagues about this book. They're so not interested in this book. Like some of my friends that I'm like, you got to read The Master and His Emissary. It's the best book I've ever read. They're not interested in it. They're not interested in it because and for different reasons. Maybe they're just way smarter than I am. Maybe that's really the truth right there. And they're way smarter than they don't need to study a book like this. But for me, it shows me how we get stuck in one side of the brain, and we're not willing to look at both sides of the brain at the same time. And science, what we call today, and there's several places in here that, how you guys, if you've been watching the show, you know how I feel about evidence-based medicine. And that is there, and there's a reason that I feel about that way, that I think it's hogwash, and it's completely left-brained, and it's completely and I'll kind of break it down as we go right there, but so he got he got advised not to do this. They demanded further investigation. For example, every known creature with a neuronal system, however far down the evolutionary tree one goes and how far back in time, has a system that is asymmetrical. So no matter how far you want to study or go back to any animal, any creature that has a brain, that system is asymmetrical. It's not matching from right side to left side or front side to back side. Why on earth would that be, given that the world we are interacting with is not asymmetrical? I was already involved in neuroimaging research on the loss of normal brain asymmetry in schizophrenia. So he was already studying what happens when we study a schizophrenic person. A schizophrenic person doesn't have right side to left side brain activity, according to Dr. McGilchrist. They're trying to figure out the world from the left side. And so he was already in there. So he said, I couldn't help seeing the topic as potential of some significance. When after 20 years of research, I arrived at the point of publication of this book, I believed I would face hostile establishment. With a few exceptions, that was not the case, and thankfully, some of the best-known names in neuroscience on record as engaging seriously with the book's thesis. I also expected, of course, the usual faction of self-appointed myth debunkers who would feel comfortably one-up the gullible masses by professing that there was nothing in it, without the bore of acquainting themselves with the evidence before pronouncing. I imagine there have been plenty of those, but that's neither here nor there. The other reason I did not expect the book to be widely read is because it is, I admit, demanding. It is a hard book to read. You gotta commit to reading it. I don't think it's a hard book to read. It's not near as hard as this book that Jordan Peterson wrote, in my opinion, called The Maps of Meaning. I actually started there on The Maps of Meaning before I found The Master and His Emissary. And it was, so it is a very demanding book, but he tries to write it as clearly as he can. He said, 10 years in, 10 years on after the book, I've been genuinely astonished by the completely unforeseen extent to which this book has been taken up by people in every discipline and from every walk of life. It has already sold over 100,000 copies, and the readers all over the world. I think the reason for this must be the structural and functional differences between the brain hemispheres, which I describe have, as indeed they must, their correlates in the mind, and that we are intuitively aware of these structural and functional differences within our consciousness, but only, it seems, once they are pointed out. One of the most common reactions from readers has been, and this is what I got, and this is what I get every time I explain it, almost, this is what I get. He says, one of the most common reactions from readers has been, you articulated ideas that I knew to be true, but for which I had never found words. You told me something that was immediately compelling because I was, at some level, already aware of the patterns you were revealing and the associations you were making. That it's so inspiring to me. Because when you sit in front of a patient and you tell them how their body works and you tell them how their brain fires, they know that it's true because inside their soul, they know that already. They just never had anybody put it to words in a way that they could understand it. They didn't understand it, and they weren't able to say it. And I think sometimes as a patient, I think that because you guys have lives and because you've got so many other things to do, that you don't necessarily read the same things that I read. Just like I don't read the same things that you read, right? I don't understand the things that you know. I would get lost in your world in 1 second trying to figure out all the things that you know in your world. But when I explain to you how your brain works, and I explain to you that there's a difference between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, it's just like, man, you just said something that I already knew was true. It's a really a big thought right there. This cannot be due to such readers simply being familiar with the popular left brain, right brain story, because the picture that emerges from this book is quite different from anything they would have come across previously. It's true. The things, I didn't learn this in chiropractic school. I didn't learn it in the first 15, 16, 17 years of practicing chiropractic. I didn't ever go to a continuing education seminar and have anybody explain this to me ever. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the fact, maybe this is a bunch of hooey and it doesn't even make any sense. Or maybe it's like cutting edge stuff that's like right on it's like finally we've had someone put it in print so that we could really understand what's going on. And it really is great right here. Just how different this picture is from familiar left brain, right brain story can be judged from the simplest of observations. It is, for instance, just not true that the left hemisphere is unemotional, perhaps a bit boring, but at least down to earth and reliable. In fact, the left hemisphere is more likely than the right to get angry or dismissive, to jump to conclusions, to become deluded or stuck in denial. Equally, it's not true that the right hemisphere has no language. It usually has no speech, and that's a different matter. That's a really big that's a really big issue because you can't speak if you damage your left hemisphere, but you can understand language and you can non-verbally communicate with someone. It understands many of the subtlest and most important elements of language better than the left. Nor is it true that the left hemisphere cannot deal with visual imagery. In certain respects, it is very clear it can. Math and science are not primarily dependent on the left hemisphere. And I'll read that again. Math and science are not primarily dependent on the left hemisphere, but draw in different respects on both hemispheres. And no, the left brain is not male and the right brain female. That's not true. The hemispheres hypothesis transcends and replaces and is not a perpetuation of the old dichotomies, reason versus feeling, rationality versus intuition, system 1 versus system 2, male brain versus female brain. None of that stuff is real. Each hemisphere plays its part on either side of each of the dichotomies. So when you can, there's a, you just kind of get into what's typical. There's a picture in the book right here about right side and left side brain and what it does. And basically, he's just like, it's not true. It's what a lot of the things that we've learned about the brain is not true. There is only one pairing here that is broadly correct. All the others are false, sometimes so badly that they represent the inverse of what is known to be the case. Yeah, so a lot of the things that we know about our brain is not true anymore. And as for conventional philosophical debate, just how different the thesis of this book is, taken as a whole, from an existing pattern can be gauged from the fact that no one, to my knowledge, has ever seen, let alone forged, a philosophical position on the basis of the commonalities between, for example, realism, the appreciation of uniqueness, music and time, a sense of humor, a capacity for reading body language, sustaining attention, and the fight or flight mode, or between unreasonable optimism, manipulation, disembodiment, literalism. I know that's a lot of stuff right there, but there's really not been a philosophical debate about how it works. Nor are the elements that one would have come up with according to any preconceived theory of my own that I might have had. They simply came of immersing myself for 20 years in the field. And I'm fixing to finish my 19th year of having a license. And that sentence I highlighted because it jumped out at me right there. It jumped out at me because it's taken some time. It's taken some time to accumulate enough information, and really the up and to the right and over to the left is the starting point of how it works. Because once you go up and to the right and over to the left, then what happens is now the left sends it back to the right, and it creates a back and forth communication issue but in your brain, and that's what sets your body into peace, and it works that way. So I kind of understood that when he said 20 years into the field. It took him that long to work. The sheer variety of the people who have responded to and taken up my ideas also helps, at least in my own mind, to support the thesis that the world is structured according to hemisphere differences. The world is structured according to hemisphere differences, since, if I am right, it ought to apply to human experience across the board. So, as well as many positive responses from the world of neurology, psychiatry, psychology, and philosophy, I have had enthusiastic responses from some areas which initially surprised me, only in the sense that I know relatively little about them, such as the worlds of economics, finance, and law. And I have been delighted, but less surprised, by warm responses from artists, musicians, therapists, and from the world of teachers, priests, and doctors. When I read that, I wrote chiropractic wellness in the book. Like, one of the things that I absolutely love, and I'm so blessed that I get to do this every single day, is I haven't ever come across a better tool than chiropractic. When we get in chiropractic school, there's this term called chiropractic warrior. Like, you're all in on chiropractic. You just fall into the whole mess of it, and you just believe everything there is to believe about chiropractic. I'm not a chiropractic warrior. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not interested in chiropractic because of chiropractic. I'm interested in chiropractic because of you, because of me, because of my family. That's why I'm interested in chiropractic. And if I found something that I thought was better, then I would use those things that are better. But I haven't come across anything so far. There's never been a day in the 20 years that I've been doing this, 19 years that I've been doing this, that I've been challenged to the point where I thought chiropractic was hogwash. There's never been a day where someone has come and said something to me that challenged me to the point that I thought this is a bunch. I get that all the time. I get that, and I don't get it quite as much as I used to because I don't hang around with people all the time, other than the people that are here in the office. Right? I spend most of my time right here. I've been here all day long. We started this morning at 7, so I've been in the building for 12 hours nearly, and the people that come here want to get adjusted. That's why they come here. They want some help. And so, but I've spent a lot of time over the years talking to people who, oh, chiropractic is stupid. It's a bunch of crap. It's nonsense, blah, 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 blah. That like, and never one time have I thought to myself, man, I wonder if they're true. I wonder if that's right. Because I understand it to the level that it works. I understand what we're trying to do. I understand the subluxation and the physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses that break us down. And now Dr. McGilchrist has shown me in a deeper level exactly what happens neurologically from right side to left side brain, and that the stuff that I got. I actually found the book reading through my notes of Dr. Michael Hall in my functional neurology program that I went through, and luckily I was exposed to that in chiropractic school. One of my best friends in chiropractic school is John Condi, and he has the Condi Center for Chiropractic Neurology in Delray Beach, Florida. And then in 2013, I guess, MJ and Katie Lewis from Roswell, they came in and did an internship with me, and then we worked together for a couple of years, and they were really strong neurology people. And so I got this flame lit again that showed me even deeper. And for people that don't understand, when people say negative things about chiropractic and chiropractic wellness, to me they just don't understand. And that's my job. That's my job to do this stuff. It's taken me a long time to get this show put together, and we finally are getting better at it. But it's taken me. It's my job to share this stuff with you. And I thought of all those, the neurology, the psychiatry, the psychologists, the musicians, the therapists, all those things, like we talked about on with our Taking Church to Health last night. The pastors have a piece of the puzzle, but they can't get you up and walk. We're not going to get up. I guarantee you there's not going to be one Sunday that we stand up and everybody get up and we're going to walk for 30 minutes. That's not going to be part of the pastor's treatment plan, but it is in chiropractic wellness. We are going to look at how your brain is firing. We are going to do a pupillary light reflex on you and a reflex app. I had that on a new patient today, and she had a 20 frontal lobe score. And after I showed her that she had a 20 frontal lobe score, she told me about when she was a little girl riding on the handlebars of a bike that her dad was riding, and they hit a bump and she fell off and hit the front of her head on the concrete. Like she didn't when she came to the office, she had a back problem, like a hip was feeling weak or something. She didn't understand the tie-in between what was going on and then the whole picture. So eat well, move well, think well, as Dr. Chestnut says, right? The if we can get better nutrition, if we can get our bodies moving, if we can get our nervous system to fire properly, if we can remove the subluxation and the interference, like, man, it's just an awesome deal to get somebody to be well and function well. So that I got away from the book, but that's kind of what I was. It's just so inspiring to hear and to be part of chiropractic wellness and have this as part of the tool that we use. There's a quote right here. The left and right halves of the brain do function in some different ways, but these differences are more subtle than is popularly believed. For example, the left side processes small details of things you see. The right processes the overall shape. If you want to know that to be true, watch a little child and the way they draw a house, and the figure that they draw a house, and if it's on there. And he says what he's. I mean, let me say it again because it's big. The left and right halves of the brain do function in some different ways, but these differences are more subtle than is popularly believed. And it's kind of downplayed. And he says, oh, yes, indeed. But why should subtle mean unimportant? Indeed, why would processing small details of things versus processing the overall shape not have a whole raft of consequences? And of course it does. The quote, by the way, comes from a publicity surrounding a book called Top Brain, Bottom Brain. which involved a number of caricatures of its own, so one could understand the drive to get the inconvenient hemisphere story out of the way. One development over 10 years since publication has been the increasing respect for the capacities of the right hemisphere. It is no longer treated as having cognitive skills vastly inferior to those of a chimpanzee. As one of the giants in the field, Michael Gazzaniga, once put it. In fact, recent research from Gazzaniga's own lab shows it to be a reliable and insightful partner. And another recent study collecting the areas of damage associated with the drop of IQ following a stroke showed them to be almost entirely in the right hemisphere of the brain. So the master and his emissary, the name of the book is referring to the right hemisphere of the brain as the master and the left hemisphere of the brain as an emissary. Now, I didn't know what the definition of emissary was the first time I heard the book. And the definition of an emissary is a person sent on a special mission, usually as a diplomatic representative. So the right brain is the master. The left brain is the servant to the master. But the problem with the left brain is it thinks it's the master because it's cocky and arrogant. So it has to get on with life. We have to get on and go and do things, but we just don't understand it quite like that we need that right brain master to tell us what to do on the left brain, and then the left brain needs to go do it and report back to the master. And then when it reports back to the master, then we set off the cascade of going back and forth, and now we become whole. He says, my position in brief is that the nature and structure of the brain must be reciprocally related to the nature and structure of consciousness. So that gets a little bit crazy. He said, I also did not mean to imply that the changes in cultural balance were due to having been gross changes in our brains over the time periods in question. Given that we are evolved creatures, it is bound to be true that our brains have changed at some level, since our brains both mold and are turned molded by the culture in which we live, but it is not my point. What I suggest is that nowadays we draw on the potential of our brains differently from a way in which we have used them at different times in periods in the past, periods of which also differ from one another in the same respect. An analogy might be this. For a considerable while, I might find myself listening to a selection of radio stations. If, with that time, I find I'm listening to one radio station only, that does not imply my having a new radio set, just that I am using the options made possible by existing set in a more limited way. Nor do I suggest the causes of such cultural shifts can be reduced to neuroscience. There are many causative factors in play when cultures change, including sociology, psychology, environmental, epigenetic, technological, and political factors. What he's trying to say there is that our world is shaped by the way that we use our brains, and that our brains are shaped in the way that our world is functioning. And we can actually change the way society is if we will just understand how to work our brain. If we just understand how our brain works and let our brain work, we will really move into a different level. So he makes a point multiple times in this introduction that what we've moved into is a left brain. We've moved into a left brain society. We've moved over to that point to where we're all about grasping and getting things and taking over and being in charge and winning and getting the money and all that stuff. And we're missing out on the whole beauty of life on the right side. And when other countries follow this Western model, and this Western model has moved towards this left brain, then those other countries, you watch them, they do the same thing because that left brain is all about grasping and getting things done. That's why most of us are right-handed. We're right-handed because the left brain is trying to get us to grasp things. But we don't grasp them until we understand that there's no threat from them. And then it's a process that takes place. So I do say clearly in the book that differences between hemispheres are not absolute. But since I have been misunderstood on the point, perhaps I should emphasize it again. Very few differences are ever absolute. He's not saying that they are. There is, in other words, an overlap. We should not expect absolute differences in order for the differences to be substantial, even dramatic, as the cause that the things to be different. And he's saying that, well, I'll go ahead. A couple of related points are worth making. I've heard it said the hemispheres are more like than they are unlike. It's hard to know exactly what this phrase means, but whatever it means, sometimes in life is the differences that count. Donald Trump and Albert Einstein are undoubtedly more like than they are unlike. An old banger and a new Ferrari are both cars with internal combustion engines that are in a sense more alike than not. But when I'm buying one, I'm interested in their differences. And that's what is a big that is big right there, because the same thing happens to us when we're trying to get you healthy. It's not so much about how they're similar, it's how they're different, what differences there are that so that you can get healthy. And when they're not working, I'm telling you, you're not healthy. It's not good. The visual pathways of each human brain hemisphere are technically similar, though their vision of the world phenomenologically is not. The way you see things with your right brain and the way you see things with your left brain, even though the pathways are equal to both sides, are different in the way that you handle them. Finally, some people feel that I have gone well beyond the facts and that I've somehow simply gone too far. Whether I have taken things too far depends on many things, including the extent of the various hemisphere differences, whether there are any patterns of overall meaning in those differences, and the context in which you view them. So, yeah, whenever you think he's gone too far, you might want to realize that you're working out of your left brain. If you do know the extent, then it is scarcely far enough. My experience has been that where this objection has been made, the problem lies in my having dared to link brain science with history of ideas. This may simply express a discomfort felt by too many scientists as it's straying into the realms of philosophy and cultural history. The scientists don't like to talk about this. I could get a bunch of scientists that have never heard of this book or never talked about this right here, and they'd call me foolish. They would say that this whole show is foolish and this thing is ridiculous. And it's like, you're not seeing the whole picture. You're not seeing the whole picture, and you don't understand the whole picture of the thing. So, it is also the easiest thing to say and the hardest thing to counter. Let me back up. So much of the use I have made of the data have presented, but there is a further legitimate concern to be addressed: the extent and representativeness of the data themselves. It has been said by one or two critics that I must have cherry-picked the data. In other words, ignored or passed over the data that did not suit my argument. This is not unreasonable suspicion to have when confronting any large work at a present coherent overall picture. It also is the easiest thing to say and the hardest thing to counter, since it cannot be disproved. And I face that all the time. How do you measure what doesn't happen? When a person gets adjusted and they're better, and they get adjusted and they're better, and they get adjusted and they stay better, and they stay better, then how do you prove that they're better because they got adjusted when nothing bad is happening? The only way you can do that is for them to go away and not get adjusted, and then the bad problem comes back, and then they come back and get adjusted again. And it's like I can understand what he's saying right there. In science, you can be perfunctory as you like as long as you are saying what everyone else is saying. But if you say something different, you need reasonably enough to be as explicit about your evidence as empirically based as possible. That way you are open to challenge, and it is how science progresses. Yeah, when you say something that's different than everybody else says, when I say that the reason that you have acid reflux most likely is because you have deficiency in your right hemisphere, I'm probably the first human being that's ever told you that. You probably thought that the reason you were having acid reflux all the time was because of the spicy foods you were eating. Like we talked about that, right? When I tell you that the reason that your testosterone crashed has nothing to do with anything but your right hemisphere is not functioning properly because you're overstressed. What did my lady tell me today? Whenever I get stressed, I slouch, right? Why does she slouch? Because stress depletes the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe of the brain is responsible for the flexor muscles. And if the frontal lobe of the brain is exhausted, and that's the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe, and that's the thing you have to make decisions on, and if that is getting exhausted because you're stressed out, then it turns itself off. When it turns itself off, you go into a flexed position because your psoas muscle is flexed. It's in contraction. Your pec muscles are in contraction. Your SCM muscles, this muscle on the side of your neck right here, is in contraction. It pulls your head down. She said, I don't know why when I get stressed out, I flex. And it's like, yeah, that's what happens. And when you flex, if you look at a low back problem, when you flex and you put pressure on the front of the disc and you push the disc out the back and you bulge the disc. Like it's very few times that you actually have a bulging disc in your low back when you actually have a curve in your low back that's not in flexion. It's most of the time you bent your lumbar spine forward. Now the question is, why did you do that? Why did you do that? And what was going on that caused it to happen? And why did your brain not fire properly? And so I understand that when you say something that's different, I understand how difficult that is and I understand how difficult that is for people that's never heard it to think that there's any credibility for me saying it. I don't argue with that standpoint right there. If you've never heard some of this stuff before and I explained it to you, and I'm the only human being that's ever explained it to you, I would totally understand why you would think that I don't know what I'm talking about. And maybe I don't. But I think there's some things there that we can learn from about what's going on. And he does a good job in the book right here of explaining it. When it comes to the human brain, things are rarely, if ever, cut and dried. None of the pieces of evidence can be by itself conclusive, but their convergence across the variety of aspects of human psychology has become increasingly persuasive. Some of the things that I wrote down right here. Science, truly to be such, must center not on descriptions and names, but on principles. That is, generalizations, theories, relationships, interconnections, explanations about and among facts. Yes, science is not just one part. It is the whole thing. And he gets in here and he talks about Darwin and Freud and the two different combinations of what they were saying. And he said, Freud has provided us with a body of concepts and a manner in which they are related that is not falsifiable at all, because no empirical observations could distinguish between his theory and any competing theory. The status of his work, then, is like that of philosophy in that it provides a more or less convincing account of experience and does not depend on scientific data one way or the other to carry that conviction. You take it or leave it, depending on whether it makes better sense of your experience than any compelled model, which doesn't mean that it isn't valuable. Darwin, by contrast, has provided us with hypothesis that relates intimately to observations in relation to which empirical data are indeed relevant, notwithstanding the facts that no single experiment can possibly prove or disprove hypothesis. To quote the Darwinian George Gaylord Simpson again, the most striking example of a theory that cannot be definitively proved or disproved is the most important of all biological theories, that of organic evolution. Although some quite limited predictions can be deducted from the theory was not in fact established by prediction, and it is not sufficiently tested by it. An enormous number of observations, enormously varied in kind, are all consistent with the theory, and many of them are consistent with no other theory that has been proposed. We therefore can, if we are rational, must have an extremely high degree of confidence in the theory. What does that mean? Like what difference does that mean, right? Well, you can't tell me where original life started. Nobody can. Nobody can tell us that. We can have arguments all night long about it. We can say that it happened in the garden. We can say that it was a big bang and it exploded and it was 30 billion years ago or 300 billion years ago or however long. No one knows the answer to that question. We have to take the information that we have put together, and we have to run it through the treadmill of the grind of conflict and go with it and see if it holds up. And what I really believe is that what we're learning about the brain and what we know about the brain and what we know about the right side and the left side of the brain will hold up over time. There are several things that he talked about, but that he kind of wants to address as he's going through the book. The best way to address, he says, second and following from this, it suggests that the best way to address some shortcomings as we identify will not be much by piecemeal strategies, necessary as they are bound to become at some level, as by opening our eyes to the limitations of the view of the world which underlies them. The view which, as a society, we appear to adopt as our default. It is the aim of this book to do precisely that. We do not need a more quick fix. We need a shift in the paradigm. And that's where, and then he starts getting into the right side and the left side of the brain and all of the different ideas of what exactly, why he wrote the book and what are some of the big deals of the book. And so just to close tonight, I just want to give us a little bit of thought here, just so you can have an idea of what we're talking about if you don't understand any of what I've been saying tonight. Because I've drawn it up multiple times, and I just want to draw it one more time for you, and to so that you can have a little bit of information. And then we will break it down every Wednesday for a while. We will break it down and really get into exactly what we're learning about how your brain works. And this is the thing that I teach, that I try to show new patients is this idea right here. And this is what I explained to the girl today that has had anxiety her whole life. And this is the thing that I try to explain to her is this is I draw this picture. I draw the right side, and I draw that on the board right there. And the way that we process information in our brain, we could split that brain in half. This is our right side. This is our left side. The way that we process information in our brain is we process. It doesn't necessarily follow a specific pathway in this manner, but we process information in the right hemisphere. And the right hemisphere of the brain is one of the first things that it has to do is deal with that threat, right? This is the unknown. And the unknown means, what it means is, am I going to die in this moment? That's what the primitive part of the right brain is trying to talk about. Am I going to die? Is it unknown? Is there a threat that is going to hurt me in this situation. And if your brain cannot get past that, it's not going to get past anything. But it's going to start right there. That's the unknown. And the unknown is going to start the stress response. You're going to get your stress response, your fight or flight response. That's going to happen in the right hemisphere of the brain. Then, once the brain determines that you're not going to get eaten, like I'm going to finish this talk and I'm going to turn all these lights out, and then I'm going to walk out there into the hall, and it's going to be dark in the building because I'm the only one in the building. And my right brain is going to try to determine, is there anybody else in the building? It's immediately going to look for a threat in the hallway because I'm going to be in the dark. It's unknown, in the dark, right brain threatening situation. But as soon as my right brain determines that I'm not being threatened, it will send that information, which is the big picture of life. It will send it over to the left brain. And the left brain now deals with the known world. And in the known world, there is no threat. And this is our parasympathetic or rest and recover world. That's what's happening in our left brain. That's where we get into that peaceful part. If this happens, and it's a bad picture, but if that happens, the upper brain dampens the lower brain. And what that means is the upper rational brain will dampen the lower emotional brain, and it will turn off the amygdalas that are in that brain. But if that's not happening, and if you can get that to happen, that right there is health. In my opinion, you'll be healthy if you can manage that right there. If you can get that to happen, it's like, man, okay, now we got a chance. We got to get the threat out of the right brain over to the left brain. We got to get the left brain to do its work, and now we can go to work and handling our environment. But we also have a big picture of what's going on, and we can work out the details from the big picture, and then we can then that's when we will be healthy. And as long as we can get that done. But if for some reason if we don't get this shutoff valve to the amygdala, then the amygdala is going to fire the locus coeruleus, and the locus coeruleus is a part of the brain that's going to release adrenaline in the brain, and the right hemisphere of the brain has an affinity for adrenaline. So you're going to get all the things that your blood's going to pump, all those things that are going to happen, right? And then you're going to get a signal sent from the amygdala down to the adrenal glands that sit up here above your kidneys, and your adrenal glands are going to pump out cortisol. And that cortisol is going to help you coagulate your blood. It's going to increase your blood sugar. It's going to turn off your cerebellum, which is going to control your balance, coordination, and posture. That's going to turn off with cortisol. Turn down. You're not going to be as balanced, coordinated posture because you don't need those things if you're in a tiger fight, if you're in a threatened situation. And then that's going to fire, this whole system is going to fire over to your HPA axis. And that's going to lead to anxiety, depression, concentration, your ADD and your ADHD problems. It's going to work on sugar handling problems. So your diabetes is going to happen over here. Your weight gain is going to go up. You're going to have trouble sleeping. Your cholesterol is going to go up. Your digestive. Now we've got what's called lower brain escape. Now we're going to get into the things that shut down: the digestive system, the immune system, the reproductive system. I told that girl in that deal today. Leslie's my wife, and she runs the front desk. And I used the example of the hallway right there. And I told that girl, I said, "Hey, look here. If we opened that door and there was a tiger in the hallway, and I told Leslie, 'Hey, babe, you sure do look cute in that dress today or that outfit today,' I really like your hair. You're really looking cute. Do you think those flirtatious words, when they landed on Leslie, would really go anywhere at all if there was a tiger in the hallway? Would reproduction be necessary in the middle of a tiger fight? Nope. No one's ever done it. Never happened in the history of mankind. I bet you $1. It's never happened. So all of your reproduction is going to, and that girl just started shaking her head. She was like, my periods have been erratic my whole entire life. They've never been right. I'm like, yeah, I know. And how about your polycystic ovarian disease or, PCOS, whatever it is, right? Well, how about all that stuff that goes along with it? How about all the other things that your low testosterone in the males and all the things that happen right there, right? It's just part of the deal. And then the last thing is the posture. And all of this scribbling that I'm doing on the board right here is this is the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere differences in the way that things operate. And it really is it really is, it's the smartest thing I know to help you be healthier. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to walk, you're trying to keep your eyes up, you're trying to be social, you're trying to be empathetic, you're trying to do all those things that in the world that keeps that if you can get your brain to work that way, you can enjoy a healthy life. That's really what it's all about. And if you can understand the right side and the left side differences, then and we'll get into them as we go. And when we get to chapter 2, it's just like it's taken me months. I still don't even think I've gotten chapter 2 handled. And I've been working on it for, I don't know, we might be a year now or something that we've been working, maybe 2 years we've been working on chapter 2. It's going to take a long time to get chapter 2 working. So I know that if you're not really into this stuff is probably boring, but if you go back and if you can get a grasp of it and you can start to understand it, you can really gain some health and you can get yourself healthier. And that's what and on top of that, if we can get enough of us to get healthier, we can make the world a better place too. And I think that's worth sitting in here and doing this show and seeing if we can make it happen. So thank you guys for listening. Thanks for the introduction to the Master and His Emissary. I hope you guys have a great night. Kim Van's going to be with us tomorrow night on the show. She's our nutritional specialist in the office. She helps run our nutrition department, and Kim's going to be on the show with us. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow night's show. So hope you guys have a good night, and we will talk to you tomorrow at 6.